Welcome to Muskegon Rising, a community service project of the Muskegon Rotary Club. Our purpose is to create lasting positive change. We've been doing that here since 1916. So, let's get started.
Good morning. I'm Nancy Crandall, a Muskegon Rotarian, and today we are joined by Dr. Paul Lomeo, who has taken a fascinating journey from practicing medicine to owning a marijuana grow and retail outlet. He brings a perspective that blends science, personal passion, and entrepreneurship. We'll hear how his path led him into this growing industry and what he's learned along the way and what it means for the future of cannabis in our communities. So, welcome.
Thank you, Nancy.
Dr.
It's
Lomeo.
good seeing you again, too. Call me Paul.
All right, Paul, it's good to see you. You've spent years in medicine as an ENT specialist. What first sparked your interest in cannabis?
Well, it was kind of interesting. I didn't know I would go down that avenue. As you said, I've been doing ENT in 35 years in Muskegon, loved it. And then COVID hit. And when COVID hit is also about the same time that cannabis businesses were coming to play in the state of Michigan. So I never really thought much of it. I know my patients have always, some of them have used cannabis for chronic pain or for cancers post-operatively. And, you know, I didn't know much, and they were saying that, hey, this works, this helps me better than opioids. And then my children, during COVID, says, you know, maybe we should do this. Maybe we should have a family business. At first I was kind of reluctant, because I didn't know much about it. But then when I really started learning about cannabis, I thought it was a great idea for my children, the young people, as well as me. I didn't really understand the medical part of cannabis until I found out we had these receptors, and that was a game changer for me. These receptors that we have actually controls pain, anti-inflammatory, and the plant does that with all its terpenes and other properties of the plant. So here I am. And
you mentioned receptors. Explain a little about that.
Yeah, no, I didn't know anything about that. I thought basically, maybe they're just getting high and that's helping their pain. But no, we have these receptors for cannabis, just like opioid receptors. And these cannabis receptors have been around for 5,000 years. And that was a game changer, as I said. And it was actually, I think in 1988, Israel was the first one to come up with these receptors. We have two types, CR1 and CR2. CR1 are mainly neurological, the brain, central nervous system. And the CR2 are like the muscles, bones, abdominal problems. And depending on these receptors, we could target some of the plant to help where their pain and discomfort is.
And where are these receptors located?
All over.
All over?
I mean, you could actually, I should have probably brought a map. You could Google cannabis receptors, and they'll show you what body parts they control and help. And some of these receptors will tell you, hey, you need so-and-so part of THC, CBD, the terpenes, because certain terpenes, which are in the cannabis plant, help certain anti-inflammatory process, anxiety, and other chronic pain. So,
yes,
so these receptors are, that was a game changer.
I guess.
Because that brought medicine and cannabis together for me. And
was this when you thought, I could make this the next chapter of what I do?
Correct. Yeah, I felt like, you can't practice forever. And I do like medicine. And how can I keep some part of medicine alive after ENT? And this was a part. This was a part that I could still help patients or even help people with these receptors and the plant.
So you mentioned this is a family business. Were your friends, people surprised when you moved from ENT to cannabis?
I had I get along with every physician. I think but one of them actually pulled me to the side when I opened this and says, "What are you doing?" And they said, people come in the ER all the time, intoxicated, and they have marijuana on board. And I said, well, marijuana is kind of different. People do it for recreational and people do it for medical. Alcohol, it's all recreational, and there is no benefit with alcohol. And after they gave me a lecture, I said, do you drink alcohol? And they responded, yes, they do. And I said, well, cannabis is better. People could do recreational like alcohol, recreational cannabis. And there are people who really need cannabis because they don't want to be hooked on these opioids. You'd be surprised in 35 years how many patients I've had that were hooked on opioids because of pain control for whatever reason they were taking them from. And this is a great alternative.
There seems to be a lingering stigma about marijuana. You kind of touched on that. How do you deal with that with your patients?
It's tough. At first it was tough. Now I'm getting in the groove of explaining it to them. And I do talk about these receptors a lot to patients, or if a customer comes in, we do talk about these receptors, why it is helps medical. And so I tell them, the reefer mania, which we all heard back in the 60s and 70s, is really not true. And cannabis was, in the early 1930s, for pain control in the United States, you had to get a marijuana license. And I have a little lecture where I photocopy that license. It was only $1. And for doctors to prescribe, Eli Lilly was one of the biggest pharmaceutical companies who supplied marijuana in the early 1900s in the United States.
And what happened? Why are the
opioids?
Oh,
the pharma, the opioid companies became stronger, and pharmaceuticals, and they sort of kicked the marijuana off the shelf. Before you know it, it was a Schedule I drug, which is kind of crazy. Thinking cocaine, which is much worse, is a Schedule II drug. So
doesn't make sense.
Doesn't make sense.
So you see cannabis more as a medicine,
correct,
rather than a lifestyle process.
I sort of see it at both, but mainly medicine. I understand the lifestyle because I don't know if you know that alcohol people use as recreational, but alcohol is declining in the United States, especially with the young people, as well as cannabis is being their more recreational than alcohol. They like cannabis better just because of many things. The hangover, and believe it or not, young people Google everything, and they're so health conscious. And when there is nothing with alcohol, they read all the stuff that alcohol causes. With cannabis, they could justify, hey, I am getting a little anti-inflammatory, but I am getting a recreational too. So it is growing.
So what do you wish more people understood about cannabis and its benefits?
I wish they would understand it's not only where back in the 70s and 80s, people were just getting high in the back alleys, their garages, behind their parents' back, that they are actually using this to get off to help for chronic pain and get off opioids. As I said before, these opioids really, people take them for chronic pain, but they're like a zombie, some of them. When you take marijuana, they get in a level where they could almost still function. They're not doing it to get high. They're doing it for a medical reason. And in different parts of the plants helps. As I said before, we have indica and we have sativa, and they both do different things, different properties, and really young people know which one they want. Like if they really want to go to sleep and anxiety, they'll go for the indica, which does that. If some of them want some energy, they'll go to the sativa, a part of the plant, instead of just looking to get high.
So that brings us to the business. What's the most rewarding part of building this business thus far?
Family, that we work together. We talk about everything from the cost of the the marijuana that we're going to sell, the function of the building. That's probably the most rewarding. The second is, as I said before, it's my second chapter after medicine, but still keeping my toes in medicine somewhat.
And you say your family. Who's involved?
My son-in-law, my daughter. So they know a lot. They have started this from ground up. They know everything from growing the plant to actually harvesting the plant and putting certain products on the shelf.
What's been the toughest challenge that you weren't expecting?
The rules. Some of the rules have changed since we started this. I don't know if people, since it's federally illegal, we have a different tax base than most companies. We have what's called 280E. 280E is where they tax you 70%. Yeah, it's very high.
I guess.
And that's why we would like marijuana to go from a Schedule 1 to really just deschedulizing it. Put it in the alcohol and tobacco category. I mean, even if you schedule it to 3, then now you're going to have to treat it like an opioid. Like where you may need a prescription. You're going to have to do some exemption if you put it in Schedule 3.
And what about the cost factor? Because it's federally illegal, you can't use banks, is that right?
Yes and no. When we first started, it was really one bank, and it cost an arm and a leg to use that bank. But there's more banks now and credit unions. They do charge a small fee, not like they did when we started. And there's a way they could get around it. I don't know all the rules of banking, so the federal government won't take their FDIC requirement away from the bank. So, yeah, we use a bank.
Well, that's got to be helpful. I remember reading stories about when this first became popular and how difficult it was.
Correct, because everything was cash.
Yes.
You had to pay your vendors in cash. You had to pay your employees in cash. They couldn't report it, but that was before we opened up Indigo. Since we have the bank, we have our banking accounts. We have debit cards, so we could get certain supplies and everything we need.
And the federal government now gets taxes.
Yeah, they get taxes. So when they get their money, they look away.
So are there, well, you've mentioned some of these regulations or hurdles in the industry, and how do they affect the work that you're doing?
They affect a lot. The Cannabis Regulation Agency, CRA, in the state of Michigan, this is all new to them. So they come up with rules all the time. They come up with rules. They're actually fining cannabis businesses because some of them go beyond what the rules are. And when they first started, they didn't have the power or the manpower to fine cannabis business for crossing the lines. Now they are. They're getting stricter. There's the black market is still present in Michigan, and that does not help retail businesses at all. I don't know what they're going to do about that. You got people crossing state lines, and that doesn't help Michigan cannabis business at all.
And you mentioned the black market. Are those businesses are not regulated or
Correct.
Watched in any way?
Correct. And let me add one more thing. It's good to go to a retail cannabis because we're required to test the marijuana. They monitor that plant from a seed all the way up. We have to tag it all the way up, and they could watch the plant grow until we harvest it. Every grower does that. And we have to send them off to a lab to make sure, the most common is mold. Sometimes you find nickel because they use metal to make certain products. Whereas the black market, what you get is what you get. You don't know how they cut it. You don't know how they made it. There's no rules unless I guess you know the grower and you trust them.
And your retail outlet, you grow all of your own marijuana.
Yeah, we're different. In the state of Michigan, they have this micro business. A micro business is like a microbrewery. Back in the old days, a microbrewery made their beer, their craft beer, kept it. They didn't really sell it to retail stores. You had to go to that store, buy that special craft beer. Well, that's what we are. We're a micro business. We grow our own marijuana, our own strains. You can't find it anywhere else. And just like a microbrewery changes the beer of the month, we do change our products from terpenes, as I told you, indica, sativa, hybrids. So we could get very creative since we have the grow right in the back.
And what about the effects? I've been reading a lot about the oversaturation of cannabis in Michigan, retail and I guess growing too, but saturation of the market. Has that affected you?
Definitely. It's affected all of us. Too many businesses, there are too many cannabis business right now in Michigan. And some of it is because of some certain cities. If you, as I talk about the taxes, we have to pay taxes. So if a city has more cannabis businesses, they get more taxes, more revenue from those taxes from Lansing. So they go by the number you have. So you do have a lot of retail, and you could see the prices from cannabis when we first started were pretty online with other states. Michigan is very low. It's like a fire sale. I mean, some stores are selling things. It costs more to make than what they're selling it, and they're hoping that they could ride out this storm and see what happens.
Are there a lot of places folding or going out of business?
Most recently, there are some that are closing. There's some bigger grows that have left Michigan. Some have actually closed their door. Some smaller ones have.
And you talk about bigger grows. Are there people who are just growers who sell to other retail outlets? And how big a business is that?
Oh, it's pretty big. Some of them grow in like 80,000 square foot buildings. Yeah, pretty big. And some of the growers own dispensaries, so they could grow like their product. They'll give it to their dispensaries, and they'll sell it to other dispensaries that aren't aligned with them, that they don't own. So you could go to a dispensary and see the same product on a couple shelves because it came from grower X, who sold it to these 3 dispensaries, where we don't have that. A micro business, we cannot buy from a grower, and they can't buy from us at this point in time. It's not like the microbreweries can now sell to your grocery stores and everything. Maybe someday we may be able to buy from a grower, and they could buy from us as well. And they're working on that.
Interesting how this has developed over the years.
New rules come out all the time.
It seems that it's constantly changing.
Yeah.
For a first-time user or someone who's interested in using cannabis, if they come to your place, how do you direct them as to what to buy?
Well, hopefully, if you go to a bar, you have your bartenders. We have bud tenders, okay, when you come into a cannabis business. And I think most dispensaries, including us, we try to tell our bud tenders to find out, are they a user, or is this they're just curious about the product. And then we explain the difference between flowers. Some people like edibles, like gummies, or very popular for probably the middle age people. They do that. The younger people like the flower. And we always tell them, start out slow. And,
When you say like the flower, what is...
The smoke. They like the vapes.
Oh, okay.
They like the joints. I'm not saying the middle age doesn't, but usually the younger kids like that part of the plant. They like their bongs. They like all that. Or someone comes in who's my age, retirement age, will probably just get a gummy for maybe anxiety or sleep or pain.
And
that's
the
edible.
bud tenders direct them as to what to buy.
We encourage our bud tenders. We make sure that they are directing that. I'm sure, something happens and people slip through cracks, but that happens in every business. But we try to tell them, start off low, even no matter what part of the plant you deny. If you want to smoke it or an edible, start out slow. And sometimes we try to find out why they want to do it, for recreational, for medical, and we try to direct them to that part of the plant, that part of the product. And when we stress to them, if that doesn't help, doesn't mean that marijuana is not going to help you. You just got to try, another product that has different terpenes, because we have our terpenes spelled out on our products. So, and what they do, and that helps a lot.
And what is the effect for the user? How does it make them feel?
Well, it depends what they're doing. If some people, if they want to just come in for recreational, they just want to get, like alcohol, they want to get a high, a buzz, a feeling good. If they're coming in medical, they're asking about their pain level. Is it joints that they want? Is it anxiety that they want? Did they just have maybe they had a cancer and they have pain from post-op or radiation, and they want that. So we tried to investigate what are they looking for, and then if they could tell us what they're looking for, then we tried to direct them to the indica, sativa, and these terpenes are pretty. That's another thing that I got involved in because of medical. Like, you get your terpenes from other plants, like your basils, your rosemary, stuff like that, have certain terpenes for, anti-inflammatory, and so does the cannabis plant. So these terpenes are pretty vital for the medical part.
And for the bud tenders, in order for them to help someone, this must be an educational process for them.
Correct.
Do you do the education and
Correct.
training of your employees?
Of our plants only, of our products. I take that back.
Mm-hmm.
Of our we try to tell them what our products do and which ones. And usually Steve and Karen, Steve's my son-in-law, Karen's my daughter, they're always there. They know everything about the products. So if a bud tender says, well, I just started, I've been here, someone's asking some question about that, they call them in, and since they're the ones who designed all that, they know exactly what it'll do, and they get them through that hump.
Well, what do you say to people who still hold to the negative stereotypes about marijuana use or cannabis?
Well, it's like everything else. Some people are open-minded. Some people know that, life doesn't stay the same. It changes, and cannabis is now in the forefront. So we try to get out of that reefer mania mentality. And I would say most people agree to that. We talk about the medical part, as earlier as I said about those receptors, why it works. It's not just working because it's psychological. And so we encourage them to also go online, do some of their own research. If you Google the medical part of cannabis, the first couple hits, as simple as they are, they'll explain it. And if you go to the images, they'll even explain it if you want to see graphs instead of reading all these articles.
Interesting. Is there anything else you want to express about the use of cannabis or about your own business?
Well, I think the use of cannabis I'm in favor of, no matter what you do, for recreational or medical. As I said earlier, I think since it has a component of recreational, it should be with alcohol and tobacco, because that's what, that's especially alcohol, it's recreational. But actually the medical part, we're still trying to figure that out, I think, nationwide, because it's in a Schedule 1 where it shouldn't be. Should it be Schedule 3 or just on its own like alcohol? I think I favor going in alcohol, but I think there should be a lot more discussions by politicians outside Michigan and outside Michigan. And for Indigo, I'm glad we did it. I thank Muskegon for allowing us downtown. First, there was some resistance for us to go downtown. We saved an old building. I think that was in favor. And it's in a nice neighborhood, and it brings people to Muskegon. We get those tours from the boats. We get people who came to Muskegon for whatever reason to enjoy our wonderful beaches, the town, and they do pop in. So we do get out-of-state people. And so, yeah, I think I think Indigo is going to add to the community of downtown.
And your growing operation is right in that same building?
Correct. It's about a 12,000 square foot building. It was an old building. It was abandoned for a while. It took a lot to get it up to speed. So we had one part was unsalvageable, about a third of it. It was just falling in. So we redid that part. We added retail and to the end, and the grow is in the back, and like all grows, you can't see them. They're sealed. You don't want, no contamination. I mean, if people take tours from our facility, and it's like going to surgery. They have to put special suits on, hats on, booties on for their shoes, because we don't want no contaminations to get in that grow.
If you could go back and talk to yourself as a young doctor, what advice would you give about this journey?
It's hard to say, because there's been hurdles all the way, but I probably wouldn't change anything. I would just be open-minded every day. I was always open-minded in medicine. As I would tell, we had residents that came through Trinity when I was there. When you train and you do whatever residency you do, hopefully you grow from your residency. Your residency is just an introduction to that specialty you choose, and hopefully you keep learning and learning every day, because if you stay in a rut at what you learned when you were young, you'll never grow. You'll be ancient before your middle age. So I guess keep open-minded in whatever journey you take in life.
I think that's good advice for all of us. So, Paul, thank you for sharing your story with us. It's inspiring to hear how you've taken your medical background and used it to shape a new chapter in this fast-growing industry. From medicine to marijuana, your journey shows how personal passion, professional purpose can come together in unexpected ways. We'll be watching as we see your industry grow, and wish you well. Thank you very much for being here.
Oh, thank you for having me, and I'm honored to be here. Thank you.